an article surfaced in the first volume, I think, of the 23rd volume, the first issue this year of the Univeristy Observer, which has been making great waves over the last couple of years, and that was written by writer Aaron Murphy about the sale of the Montrose Residences just across from UCD that everyone's very aware of. And we're actually joined by Aaron now on the phone. Aaron, how are you?
Hey, Johnny, not too bad.
Thanks for joining us. I guess this is more of a professional setting as compared to the law building, when we'd be mid-lecture complaining about the topics.
I wanted to introduce you as our first friend of the show, Aaron, but Johnny wanted to go for a more formal title.
Yeah, that would have been much nicer.
Yeah,
I actually have to put on clothes for this.
Well, that's not a question I guess we'll ask as what are you wearing. That's something we might avoid.
It's a late night show. I think.
So, Aaron, I suppose you wrote this article about the Montrose, and you studied this quite closely. And the first question is quite vague. Is the Montrose a success in your opinion as a student accommodation in UCD?
Yeah, I guess. So I wrote this article about 5 weeks ago, so it's a little bit stale almost in my mind. So I'm like refreshing myself this morning. I was thinking back over what the responses from the head of Ziggurat was saying. This is the guy Matthew McCadden, and I mean, obviously his response was, "We're very happy with what we did. It was always the plan to sell, and those 3 or 4 months at the start of last year where people had to be paid for to go into hotels because they weren't ready was regrettable, but part of it, whatever." But I think the thing that kind of stands out most about the Montrose accommodation and about just accommodation in general is that you have a crippling lack of supply, and regardless of who builds what where, Ziggurat are the only ones building purpose-built student accommodation, and they're setting their prices according to what the prices are elsewhere and costs to run the place, and obviously all those business factors come in. But the cost of accommodation elsewhere is UCD's own accommodation. There's no other purpose-built student accommodation, and UCD's own purpose-built accommodation prices went up again last year. So I mean, you're walking into a sort of a cartel situation. So regardless of whether it's a success, it actually apparently, according to a few people I've talked to, is quite a nice place to live. Regardless of the quality of the place to live, it is also just not good enough that one company and one university will be the only ones, I think, providing student accommodation for a very long time.
There you go. I mean, they seem to be out on their own sort of level in comparison to there's nothing really to compare to the Montrose, as you were saying, as they're the only really off-campus purpose-built student accommodation that there is around UCD. But it has been put up for sale. Ziggurat put it up, I think it was the 31st of August. How much now, Aaron, would it set you back now to go in and make an offer on the Montrose? And did Ziggurat give any reason as to why they wanted to sell the campus or the off-campus accommodation?
It's currently for sale for $41.5 million, and while I couldn't include in my article because I unfortunately have to keep my source a secret, and it wouldn't have added to the piece, I actually did speak to not a property developer, but a project manager in Dublin who's working on internationally student accommodation, purpose-built student accommodation for people that are similar to Ziggurat, and he said that $41.5 million for that particular building, with its turnover and with all its costs and its licensing associated with it, is probably about $2 million too much, which is fairly damning, I think. But sorry, what was the second part of your question there?
The second part was, did Ziggurat give any reason as to why they wanted to sell on the property?
Yeah, it was sort of actually the first thing he said was that this was always the plan. His press release on the Ziggurat website on the I think it was the Independent wrote the article about this, but it was posted on the website, was that he had promised his investors about a 4-year turnover or whatever from the time of building, getting students in, and then selling the place on. He promised investors that he would get these people in, get money and then sell the place on to return profits to his investors. So it was always his plan. However, they did kind of notably talk about Brexit recently in, I think it was a Telegraph interview, and they made the decision to pull out of the UK. They have some accommodation similar to the Montrose in Edinburgh that they pulled out of, and they are very happy now to have pulled out because of Brexit, but they've had trouble selling on the places in Edinburgh, and they now have instead of focusing on the UK, they're focusing on Ireland. They have a €400 million fund, and they're planning to put about 4,000 beds, student beds, into Cork, Dublin and Galway in the next 10 years.
And Aaron, can I just ask you also about just kind of the wider problem of student accommodation? Is there anything, do you have any ideas, not that I'm asking you to solve the problem, I know, but is there anything you feel that UCD should be at least trying to do to kind of help students more than they currently are with finding accommodation or alternatives?
Yeah, I mean, my friend Roisin O'Mara is actually the welfare officer, so I must admit that I don't particularly want to criticise her or what she's doing, but because it is a difficult issue. But I think that the students' union have very, very little control over the property prices in UCD campus accommodation. But I think that's the first place that prices have to go down. I mean, obviously, because the supply is so low, I think only 12% of students can actually access student accommodation at the moment, have easy access to it. Now, that's not including digs and hotels and those sorts of things that are kind of tertiary student accommodation rather than primary student accommodation. But I think the first thing that has to happen is prices have to come down. Like, there has to, if the government aren't going to introduce rent freezes, then UCD should, because it's ridiculous how few people can afford to stay at college. People can just about get to college with the grants, but they can't stay there. And I think that's kind of the biggest issue.
To the best of my knowledge now, the Montrose, when it first came out and when it was first built, I think a lot of people rolled their eyes at the thoughts of how much it would cost per month to live there. But as the years have went on, due to the general increase, across off-campus accommodation, it doesn't seem as expensive. But, you're only talking about a difference of a couple of years here, which has seen a general increase. Now, do you think that the initial pricing of the Montrose has had an effect on the campus accommodation in UCD and off-campus accommodation? Do you think there was some sort of correlation between the price increase there?
Yeah, I think. I mean, obviously, I can't guarantee it, and I can't offer evidence to it. But if you're a landowner or a landlord, and you see that these lads down the street who are full up are charging $245 a week, which I think is the current price for an ordinary room in the Montrose. If you see they're charging $245 a week, like literally about £900 a month for a room, then you're going to say, hey, I can get a bit more money for this, and I think that's natural, with no necessarily ill will or whatever on their part. There definitely is a sort of an unconscious cartel attitude to landlord pricing in Dublin and everywhere in the world, and I think that's that's a huge issue, and I think that's why dropping and rent freezing and dropping rents would be of use, because people will stop, overvaluing this room that they could be giving to a student.
Perfect. All right. Well, Aaron, thanks a million anyway for coming on. I'm sure if you keep up that writing of yours in the Observer, we'll be requesting to have you on in the near future.
No worries, Johnny. Cheers.
Perfect.
Thanks, Amy.
Thanks a million.